Yellow teeth isn't just a problem with the color of the teeth, it's a problem with your health. So today I'm going to break down what actually causes our teeth to whiten and how drugstore whitening can actually make this problem worse and continue to dull our smile and make our teeth actually look darker over time. I'm going to break down 3 natural ingredients that you can start using today to help naturally whiten your teeth. And we'll go through a 4-step DIY holistic weekly protocol that you can use to help whiten your teeth today. Whitening is not about color. Even though the term whitening might lead you to believe otherwise, what it's actually about is mineral density in the enamel of your teeth. And so stronger teeth with really strong, dense, thick enamel appear whiter because the enamel is thicker, which is the really white layer of the tooth, and also reflects light better. So that pearly white look that most people are going for, it actually comes from having really healthy, really dense enamel. When you have weak, demineralized enamel, that's when the dentin, the layer underneath the enamel in your tooth, starts to show through. And the dentin is naturally a darker, more yellow color. So yellowing of the teeth is oftentimes actually a thinning of the hard enamel layer and a showing through of the underlying layer. So what makes the enamel thin? Like what makes it lose its thickness and its strength? When it loses minerals, it loses strength. Enamel is 97% minerals. It's incredibly mineral dense and it has this complex structure. So it's incredibly strong, resilient, and it's meant to not only maintain its structure, but really be the strongest thing in your body. When you regularly consume acidic foods or drinks, this degrades the enamel. So acid breaks things down. It can break down the enamel. And if you're like me and you like acidic drinks, I drink lemon water a lot, you really do need to make it a point to wash down whatever you're consuming that's really acidic with something that's just non-acidic. For every glass of lemon water that I drink a couple of glasses of regular non-acidic water to just wash it down and make sure that I'm not drastically changing the pH of my mouth. Also, minimizing stress, which is easier said than done. I realize that, but high stress in your body means high cortisol. The more cortisol running through your body, the lower your saliva flow. So you don't have as much saliva in your mouth when you're really stressed out. You kind of get that dry, pasty feeling in your mouth, and that's how your body works. So minimizing your stress or your cortisol levels will help with that. And then you want to try and minimize mouth breathing. When you're breathing through your mouth as opposed to your nose, your mouth is open and it becomes dry. And when you have a dry mouth, your mouth is not as wet with saliva and your teeth are not as wet with saliva and the enamel of your teeth becomes dry. When you have dry mouth, your enamel starts to become less mineralized. It starts to become chalky and dry, and that's not good for long-term health. And then we want to avoid things that cause surface staining, which I think most people have heard: coffee, tea, red wine, things with a lot of dyes in them like turmeric, paprika, heavy dyed foods. These will externally stain the teeth that can usually be cleaned off, but they are sources of stain. So, if you're going to consume foods with things like that in them, a lot of water afterwards. If you're using really abrasive products on your teeth, once again, you start to lose that enamel structure and the dentin shows through. So you want to be careful about the types of products you're using. Even DIY or at-home products, you need to be careful that they're not too abrasive. Now, what does drugstore bleaching actually do? The hydrogen peroxide, and some of them I think have carbamide peroxide, some drugstore brands do. What it actually does is it goes into the tubules of your teeth, and your teeth have these little microscopic tubules running through the whole structure. The bleach goes into these tubules and dries them out. So it dries the tubules out. It allows the bleach to go into the tubules more deeply and oxidizes the stains. So it can sometimes actually just break down any surface staining by the strength of the bleach, or it'll just bleach it by virtue of the fact that it's removing color from the stain and not actually remove the particles. But in any event, what it's doing is it's going into the tooth structure, drying it out, getting deeply into the tubules of the enamel, which again, that's the really hard, dense part of your tooth. And you're putting this bleach in there to essentially break it down and allow the bleach to get further into the enamel each time you do that. And then what happens over time is as that enamel has been dried out and desiccated over and over and over again, it becomes thin, it becomes weak, and that dentin layer underneath the enamel starts to show through and become more visible. And that's why you find that you have to continue bleaching, because not only is surface stain building up on your teeth, but the enamel itself is becoming thinner. You don't want dehydrated enamel. That is not a good look. And actually, sometimes you'll even notice once you've used a drugstore bleaching product that there'll be very, very white spots on the teeth. Those are chalky, demineralized, dehydrated spots on the enamel. Over time, they'll become rehydrated with your saliva and will kind of balance out as far as the color goes. But it's just a good indicator that you are doing something that is incredibly harsh and toxic for the teeth. Whitening does not need to, nor should it, hurt, burn, sting. And just another FYI on these drugstore strips, these strips aren't meant to fit over your teeth specifically. So you're applying bleach to not only the teeth, but also the gums, because oftentimes those strips will overlap the gum tissue as well. And now that bleach is sitting not only on your enamel and obviously having an effect on the enamel, which is, as I said, the strongest substance in your body, but it's being applied to the gums, which is very, very delicate tissue for the same amount of time. So if it's having an effect on the enamel, imagine what it's doing to the gum tissue. So I would say stay away from those drugstore bleaching strips. Now, we want natural ways to whiten our teeth. So I'm going to talk about a few elements here that you can pick up and start using right away that would be really easy to integrate into a natural at-home DIY protocol for you to whiten your own teeth. So hydroxyapatite. Hydroxyapatite is what makes the enamel really hard. It's part of the enamel structure, and it's part of this crystal lattice that makes up the enamel and makes it as hard and dense and resilient as it is. And you can find hydroxyapatite naturally in nature. It's, of course, in the enamel itself, but you can find it in things like crushed pearl powder. You can find it in diatomaceous earth, which has fossilized particles in it. There's hydroxyapatite in that. And it essentially rebuilds your enamel with the exact same thing that is what makes your enamel so hard to begin with. So if you're trying to strengthen the enamel and fortify the enamel, why not use the thing that actually makes it so hard, which is hydroxyapatite. The next thing that you can use is activated charcoal, and activated charcoal binds to toxins. So sometimes in holistic medicine practices, they actually use it to absorb toxins or poisons within the gut, but it absorbs toxins within the mouth, and it also can remove surface stain. Now, just a little disclaimer here, it can be very abrasive, so be careful with activated charcoal. You don't want to dip your toothbrush into a jar of activated charcoal and rub that all over your teeth. You need to mix this with something. And if you want to make it into a very, very dilute paste, add a lot of water to it, or add a very, very tiny amount to a jar of tooth powder or a jar of toothpaste that you're making. And then the other thing that you want to integrate into your whitening protocol is either some extra virgin olive oil or coconut oil. And you're going to use this to oil pull. And what I do is I will take EVOO and I add about 10 to 15 drops of clove oil into a little jar, and I swish with this for 5 minutes. That's what I would suggest you do. And not only has this been anecdotally said to whiten teeth, but what it does do definitively is science says is that it actually increases blood flow throughout the tissues of your mouth and reduces inflammation, especially with that clove oil in there. Clove oil is a natural anti-inflammatory. And within your gums, you don't ever want to see swelling or redness. Swollen red areas anywhere in your body, gums included, is a sign of inflammation, and you don't want inflamed gums. So we want to regulate the tissues around the teeth just as much as we want to make sure that we're keeping our teeth healthy. And oil pulling with good quality oil is a very good way to do this. Now, I'm going to break down some DIY steps that you can integrate into a protocol where you can focus this onto how to get whiter teeth. And one is that you're going to use a demineralizing toothpaste or tooth powder, whichever you prefer. Make sure that this has, as I just said, hydroxyapatite in it, because that's going to directly strengthen your enamel. Bentonite clay. Bentonite clay is going to pull or absorb toxins from your mouth. And then you want some peppermint or spearmint or clove oil in there as well. And those are all amazing breath fresheners. They balance the microbiome and they just keep things feeling really good in your mouth, making sure that your microbiome is balanced and that you don't have inflammation building up in the mouth. You're going to oil pull. I oil pull every day. I mean, if you want to do this every other day, that's fine as well. But again, use a good quality coconut oil or extra virgin olive oil. And then if you want to add a clove oil or a peppermint oil to it, by all means, that's fine to do. But implement oil pulling into your mouth care routine. And then for the enamel itself, high mineral diet. So you're going to focus on eating foods that give you a lot of minerals because your tooth enamel is 97% minerals. So you need to give it the things that make it what it is, that make it nice and white, that make it hard. So bone broth is a really good source of a lot of minerals that have been shown to be amazing for teeth. Grass-fed dairy products is another good source of these types of mineral-rich foods. Dark leafy greens, another good source. And fermented foods like sauerkraut or kimchi or kefir. These foods have vitamin D in them. They also have a high amount of vitamin K, which has been shown to be directly influential in how strong or cavity resistant or white people's teeth appear. So lots of vitamin K too. And then you want to avoid anything that's going to damage your enamel. So avoid overly acidic foods or drinks, or chase them with just some regular water if you're going to still consume them, like I'm drinking my lemon water. And you want to avoid overly aggressive or abrasive products. So I was talking about the activated charcoal earlier. There are commercial or drugstore products that are too abrasive for your teeth. And I wouldn't suggest using anything from the drugstore per se, but even if you're going to make something at home, just be careful that you don't have these really hard pieces that are, rubbing against or abrading your teeth. You want to avoid mouth breathing because you don't want a dry mouth. You want a nice, well-hydrated, moist mouth, and you want your teeth to have a good amount of saliva flowing over them. They're going to maintain the mineral content that way. And then I would say avoid the drugstore whitening or bleaching strips just because those do more harm than good. Your teeth are made of living cells, so we have to treat them this way. They aren't just these dead things that are stuck in our mouth, and they are like little organ systems in our mouth, so we have to take care of them. And when we do, they can become stronger, brighter, healthier, and naturally more white. And whitening does not have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to damage your teeth. A smile glow up is not just a reflection of your teeth. It says something about how you're treating your body on a cellular level and that you can have a bright, beautiful smile in a really healthy way. And that is the best, and in my opinion, really the only way to do it.